Good evening, all. Back to doing some more bowls. We're a little low on inventory when it comes to a lot of the bowls. So this is one that was already started a while back. So we'll finish this up. This is going to be a calabash style bowl. It's going to have a totally round bottom. And the shower curtains where they belong. And like I say, we already had this started, so this wood is dry. So it might be dusty. We gotta get rid of some of this waste. So you tighten the tool rest up tight. Now we get down to the popper. Yep. I just have one little place where it had a little bit of a crack that I filled. So we'll see how that does when I sand that off. I think I tried that one with actually just putting the mica powder in the crack and then putting the CA over top of it. Get rid of that razor blade. No other cracks that I can see, so that's a plus. So now we'll start hogging out the middle. This is a bowl gouge. It's just about done for, but I keep using it, good to the last drop. I just won't be able to use it very far in, because it is getting very short. And I think we're going to have to turn the dust collector on. Don't really necessarily want to, but a lot of dust flying around here. You can probably hear I had I had the old trusty COVID last weekend, so wasn't nothing. That's why there was no YouTube last weekend for me. You're kind of out of commission. Let me get this to cooperate. It should stay sort of out of the road. Yeah, it's off to the side. This will make it a little less messy too. Let me bear with me one short second. I'm going to change the camera so this so the end camera is looking down. And just change the view to overhead so that I don't make you dizzy. I don't know if this will work or not. Try it once. That one's not on a swivel to be able to tilt it down. Should give you a little bit better view. Maybe. So at this point, we're starting to match the outside shade. Probably the hardest part about the calabash style bowl was to make this inside curve match the outside there. Feels pretty good. That's a plus. Just sort of give it a nice, simple, rounded over. Nothing, nothing spectacular. Now we're back to just the same old thing. Clean out the middle. And I didn't want that one. That was a 40-degree gouge, and I don't necessarily like to use it for this style bowl. Not to mention it's one of, this style bowl doesn't necessarily like the 40-degree gouge. I mean, I know there's a lot of people use it, but it doesn't necessarily work for me. As you go, as soon as you start to curve, you're curving right into end grain, which that 40-degree gouge doesn't particularly like. There's one thing that this style of closed bowl will make you do. It makes you look over here to see what you're doing cutting wise, because you really can't look around the corner. I just wanted to make sure I was thick, because you can have a tendency to get thin down in the bottom part quickly on these, which we didn't. That's why I started to curve it away. So now we can work on thinning that out. Should sand the outside of it. But tendency to, you do it while it's spinning, but that super glue has a tendency to smack your fingers while you're doing it. We're still pretty thick right through there. The other downfall is chips don't come out either. I left a little bit of a ridge in there. I didn't get out my. Do have the bigger bottom bowl gouge out, but I don't get the little one out. For some reason, I don't know if it's me. I'm pushing a little bit too hard on it. I'm getting some chatter in there for some reason. It still sounds like it is. So we'll go with the philosophy of less overhang, less tool overhang. Another thing I might do is switch to a smaller bowl gouge. We're still a little bit thickened through there. I got room to play. That took care of the problem. Now we have no chatter marks. Kind of a little transition line, but that's okay. That sands out really easily. Still feels it. Sort of feels like I'm still thickening up a little bit towards the bottom. So the famous last words will make one more little itty bitty cut. Just a little bit more off that bottom edge. And that should be it. Still a little bit of a lump there, but I'm not gonna keep chasing it. It just isn't worth the time to keep trying to chase a little ridge that'll sand out with 120 grit paper in a matter of a couple seconds. Now we'll get rid of some of this middle. We do have to keep stopping quite a bit because, like I said, the chips they won't come out. You have to keep an eye on the bottom though. So we're down at about there. There's this tenon plus this other extra little piece here pretty much will go away. So that's what I do have to pay attention to that. Let's go over here and make our curve. This is probably the harder of the curves to make is this one here. Now we'll actually go to the bottom bowl gouge, which probably got to move the tool rest up a little bit for that one. Because I really don't have a good curve right here. I have a hump. So I got to get rid of that for sure. And then we'll check where we're at on depth-wise. All else fails, I might have to go to a scraper a little bit here. The plan is not to, but felt pretty good. That's pretty good right there. I think I'll just finish that out. And then I'll get my calipers and I can see what we got in the middle. These are actually pretty easy to go through the bottom of. And of course we won't go through the bottom until we do finish the outside, which makes it really lovely. So we use our trusty big calipers. It looks like we're all right. Pretty consistent up through. So at this point, we'll sand the inside. We got 2-inch pad on there. That's probably what we're going to use. I won't be able to use the bigger pad on the inside. It also means I got to get sandpaper. Those two. One. As normal, we'll start out with 120 grit paper. Slow our speed down considerably. Heat is not our friend, so we don't want to generate heat. We'll make sure we didn't quite get them all. There's a couple. What I'm looking for is any any place where there's any like tool marks in here. I can even go after them without it running a little bit. That looks good. Now we can just cruise through. We'll probably stop once or twice more. But we won't spend the amount of time on the next umpteen grit as we did the first one. All we're doing is removing, making the scratch pattern smaller. This sandpaper is from Vince's Wooden Wonders. This is their blue flex. This in here is their blue flex. It's pretty good sandpaper. The only reason I had it in actual 2 inches because I messed up when I ordered it. If he has oversized stuff, I normally would use a 2 3/8. I'm really just trying to get rid of this, use this stuff up. That being said, when I get to the outside, then I'll show you. I have a different one that I use on the outside. I use the stuff from Vince. I've used his stuff for years. It holds up quite well. But there's also a kind of a, I don't know, new kid in the block, I guess you would say. If you've ever watched me and I do anything with sheet sandpaper, I use a sheet sandpaper that's from, I'm trying to think where it's from, Indonesia, Portugal. It's the Rhino paper. And I do have it in 3-inch discs. And I like it, but there again, I don't. The sandpaper supplier for me is basically a half an hour down the road for that stuff. I don't pay shipping on it, so that makes it a little bit more economical in some ways. It's very good sandpaper. And everybody has, you ask 100 people, you get 100 different answers when it comes to that, but generally it's what works for you. I need a little crack there, but I'm not going to mess with that. If I would have seen it earlier, I could have filled a little bit of that in, but that'll just give it a little character. So that's our inside. Although I need Thank you. Lastly, I'll use the 800. Now this is the 2 3/8 inch disc. These are the green flex discs from Vince's. That's as high as I will go in sanding. Some ways it's a little overkill, I think, but it does work. So that's our inside basically complete, ready to actually finish. But I might as well, while I'm sanding, I'm going to sand this top, or at least some of the top, put it that way. And that we'll use the 3-inch pad for. And this is the Rhino Grip Red Line. I'm trying to think who's selling it, other than the place that I get it from. Firecraft, I think he's carrying it now. It's a little bit more expensive than the others, but it does seem to last a little bit longer. This, I'll spin this in reverse. As you can see, it would make more sense. Let me switch back here and go strictly overhead because we're not doing anything on the inside now. The inside's done. I spin it in reverse because it does such a good job dust collection wise. That's kind of my philosophy in that. This way I don't have a cloud of sawdust flying in my face. And just like the inside, the outside 120 grit paper, pretty much where I start, period. I'm going to sand a little bit harder because there I put, it's kind of a downfall of filling some stuff with the super glue. I should have been a little bit more careful what I was doing there. And normally, it's nice if I could fill it before I make the final cuts, because it left a little bit of a stain around it because of the using the mica powder to color it. What I should have done, shoulda, coulda, woulda, would have been just to wipe a light coat of shellac over this area right here, and then filled it with the super glue and the mica powder. The super glue doesn't get along with shellac, so it would have sealed it enough right there that the color wouldn't have kind of bled into the grain a little bit right there. We'll go through the grits and see whether it's going to get lighter as we go, but this will save me a little bit of time. It'll make it a little bit easier because right now it's spinning nice and true. The chances are when I switch this over to a vacuum chuck, may not necessarily get it perfectly true. That would mean the sander wants to bounce. So the more I can get done at this stage, sanding wise, the better off I am. course, there's always the issue of you could always blow through the bottom or something stupid, but you have those days. See whether our blue, not really. Same as the little ones, we'll go right through, straight up through 800. And this is the Rhino sandpaper. Cuts really well. I will tell you this one though, if you mess around and do anything with either the hybrids or strictly resin stuff, the Rhino in their wet dry, which is the sheet paper that I use, it works just as well wet as it does dry. It does a wonderful job when it comes to sanding anything with the resins or epoxies or anything like that, because you can sand wet and it just makes life a whole lot nicer. Of course, at that stage, that part of the game, and I'm not sanding, power sanding with water, but it's all hand sanding. But generally, something small, a bottle opener handle or something like that. Mainly, that's usually what I'm doing, is the bottle opener. So that's through 800 on that part. So we're sanding about halfway down, something like that. Like I said, that will help us when we get to the bottom, which is where we're headed next. So I leave it on the chuck. Flip that over. I have an adapter for in the chuck. Which will mean I can mount it in the tailstock. Because I'm going to put it on a vacuum chuck as well. You can do these without a vacuum chuck. You don't have to run out and buy one, but I will tell you they're really kind of a nice feature to have. Although that was kind of a bit of a weak moment there I guess I was back in September. This is the guy that, if you've been around wood turning a while, the frugal vacuum guy. This is sort of the person that has taken over his business, I guess you would say. And I put the keyboard somewhere. And he's making aluminum vacuum chucks. And the real key is that it has the extra, I think he considers it like almost like a wetsuit type material on the inside, or for an extra flange type thing. Now I'll just loosen the chuck and pull it away. You don't need that. This is being held with vacuum. I also still have a mark on the bottom where the live center was originally. So that should line up. Because at this point I still want tailstock support, because we're going to get rid of all this here. Eventually we'll lose the tailstock. But for right now, we can always, the philosophy of keep it there as long as you can, just makes it a little bit more rigid. And it should spin pretty true. Like I said, it's not perfectly true out here. So that's where the advantage is of sanding that area ahead of time, while I had a better access point to it. Bring the speed up. I'm not going to go, I won't go much above 1,000 on the vacuum chuck. Make lighter cuts. And this is going to be a calabash, so I want this curve to go the whole way down through there. I pretty much have to get rid of most of the old tenon area to be able to see what I'm doing, but this will sort of be a shear scraping cut for the most part down in here. And kind of step back and look at it. Your fingers tell all. It's not necessarily cutting it very clean right there, so we're going to have to get rid of the rest of that, pull the tailstock back, and we'll make a nice cleaning cut from bottom to top, a bevel supported cut. Right now we're just trying to get the shape right. And then we'll get rid of the tailstock. Check, and we're pulling about 25 pounds of mercury, which is pretty much the max that I can pull. Sometimes I can get it to pull like 26 or 27 according to the gauge, but and we'll leave just about a quarter size or thereabouts area. That'll be a flat, that'll sort of be a tiny little bit of a flat area on the very bottom. And then we'll see if I got everything out of the road. I do. I should be able to pick up a cut and make one nice little nice and slow. Remember, this piece is not spinning very fast in there. And no matter what my cut is, it needs to be at a slower pace. And I probably left some ridges, but I also got rid of any and all the torn grain or disturbed grain. It really wasn't torn, but it was more along the lines of disturbed. So now we can go back and finish sanding that. This time I will probably just sand it in forward. Just bring my dust hose over a little closer. Tiny little spots that it didn't look quite right. So we'll just go through the grits. And the paintbrush wipes the dust off. But more importantly, if there's any little bits of sanding grit from whatever I just finished sanding with, it'll knock them off too. That was 180. Like I say, we'll go right straight through to 800. And as you can see, hopefully you can see, each grit that I go to, each next higher grit, I go up just a little bit higher on the bowl. As you can see, I'm probably halfway up now. So that once I get up to back to the 6 and 800, then I'll go the whole way out. Just to make sure I don't have a transition kind of area to where I've sanded things harder than others. As you can see right now, there's a definite difference in color from here down. And that's the difference in the grit of the sandpaper. Keeping my tiny little sort of flat area on the bottom. And we're up to 400, so we'll go up just a little bit higher. $600. Last but not least will be 800. And that will sand the entire outside again. And that's ready for finish. It's the other kind of wonders of the calabash style bowl is the finishing, which becomes more difficult. My poor man's tack cloth, just a paper towel, and paper towel does really good as far as getting this fine dust off the outside of this. So I can't pull a vacuum and put my finish on, because my finish of choice is going to be the Parfix 3408. So what I have here is just a piece of wood. It's been drilled out so it goes over the live center. There's a little piece of leather so that it doesn't put any kind of marks. I also need to sign that at the bottom. So now we'll turn our vacuum off, release the vacuum off of it. The reason I don't want to pull a vacuum and put the super glue on it is life can be really nasty to you. If there's any place in here that can possibly, like, it'll always be on the end grain somewhere. If it's thin enough, or the tubes in the wood, the straw, so to speak, if they're in line, it's liable to go right straight through and stick fast to the whatever would be behind there, a jam chuck, or in this case it's a vacuum chuck. And I definitely don't want to stick it fast to the vacuum chuck. They're a little bit pricey to ruin. Even though this one is metal, it probably wouldn't ruin it, but it would definitely mess up the neoprene stuff and all that good stuff, so we don't want to do that. These are kind of a two-step kind of thing as far as finishing goes. So we'll just take our paper towel, a little piece of polyester felt. That's what I use for a little pad in there. It's going to be my little reservoir. It's going to help hold the super glue in and keep it from making less of a mess than what it does. Gloves are a necessity. We're going to use the 3408. As you can see, this 2-ounce bottle here, I just refilled out of an 8-ounce bottle. So one of these days I really need to break out a new bottle so you could actually see the label on it. We'll get lots on it. We're going to hit our end grain first. Not going to go really up over that rim. Going to get down reasonably close to the base. Once again, I don't want to go down to where I hit the base, hit that piece of leather, because I don't want to stick that fast. So we're going to put lots on. Not going to be shy with it. We're trying to fill up the pores of the wood. and then we will wipe off the excess. As you can see, when I go around, correct, that is the one. That is one of them. I have two of them. I have the 3408 and the 3460. Either one of them can be used the same way here. You could use the 3460 if you wanted to. The 3460 will allow you to put multiple coats on, and also works really well for things that are porous in nature. One of the things that I do a little bit with, actually right now I've been doing a bunch with, is a SpectraPly. And I'll show you that here in just a little bit, because I made some little lanterns out of it. But we have 40 seconds to get our job done, so we're not in a giant size rush. We pretty much have everything saturated. We cannot go back after this once it's set up, because the 3408 will not play well with itself, I guess you would call it. If I tried to go back over this a second time in an hour or 2 hours or 2 days or whatever, once it has set up, if it can't absorb into the wood, it doesn't know what to do, so it will lay on the surface. And you'll end up with something that looks like a well-waxed car because it's sitting on the surface. So this is a one and done situation, which is fine by me, but so all I've done is wiped off the excess. It really doesn't show up very well on the paper towel because there's not a lot. There's, depending on the wood species, some woods are more porous than others. But what I'm after now is to make sure that I got everything on the surface off. I will have a little bit of excess sanding. This is cherry. This is some Pennsylvania cherry, to be exact. Locally sourced. Actually, I think it's come out of my neighbor's backyard. According to my wood guys, this would be considered the bird cherry. This one actually gets cherries on it. So in order to keep things moving along, I am going to activate it, but I'm going to shoot it at about 18 to 20 inches away and above it, and just allow the mist to float down on top of it. And that's it. So we'll give that a minute to start doing its thing. It doesn't take long for the activator to get started. Once it starts, it's a chain reaction. It'll go the whole way around and make it easy to handle. Right now, it's not, I mean, I can do it with my gloved hand. I don't necessarily want to grab a hold of it without the non-glove hand, because super glue sets up in the presence of moisture. So if I grab a hold of it with an ungloved hand, there's a certain amount of moisture in your hands. So we could end up with a bit of an issue. Tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to spin this really slow. I'm just going to, because I'd like to finish the inside. So I'm going to push the envelope a little bit. I'm going to spray a little bit of activator down here at the base, just to make it go a little bit quicker yet. Because like I say, this is kind of the issue, if that's really a thing with the issue in the calabash, because now you got to finish the inside as well. We're going to have to clean the inside, of course. And I can't grab a hold of it. If I was being patient, I could let this sit for a day, because it has a 24-hour cure time. So if I left this sit for a complete day, then I could actually grab a hold of it with using vacuum. and finish the inside, and sort of keep your fingers, even at that, you still have to keep your fingers crossed that there's not a place where it can pull moisture through. But we'll just do it the sort of the old-fashioned way to speak. Gotta find something that goes in one of them holes. Drill bit, maybe? Yes. Doesn't take much to pop it loose, but you just can't get a hold of them. You bet. Have a good Christmas. If you a person that celebrates Christmas and holidays and all that good stuff. So now we got to get our inside clean. So I just use my paintbrush. So now we're clean on the inside. Use our paper towel, just like I did on the outside. We'll wipe off the excess dust. This time we'll probably get a lot of dust on the inside because we didn't wipe that off. But as you can see, I'm grabbing a hold of this with an ungloved hand, and it has already set up enough that it's not sticking fast to my fingers. So this way we can get our finish on the inside. And I think what I have, it's always good if I have something round to sit it on, maybe. No, that one won't work. Oh. How about the original one? Yeah, that fits in there. It's nice and snug in between the ways. Just something so that it'll make it a little easier. I'm going to go get another glove though, because here's where I probably will touch wet super glue. So we're back to the same scenario as to what we did on the outside. We're just doing it on the inside. So we're back to our same piece of felt. And the felt's relatively cheap to purchase. You can get some of it at the craft store. I use a polyester felt. It seems to work a little bit better. A lot of the stuff at the craft store is not necessarily polyester, but the fabric stores places have the polyester one. Inside's going to take less material than the outside because the inside has been sealed, or the outside has been sealed, so it can't pull through to the outside. So it will take a little bit less material. As you can see why I put a second glove on, because there's just no way of holding it other than using your fingers. I'm going to get a little bit more in there. I can see some places that are, especially down here in the bottom, that are sort of have pulled it in more so than others. I think that's got it covered. Soaked in. And as you can see, I'm not in a big hurry. I mean, this isn't a giant sized bowl either, but long as it maintains a nice wet surface, it'll take much longer to start to set up anyhow. Now I have to be careful because I don't want to put fingerprints on the outside. And we're going to wipe off the excess. I'm wiping it around, and then I'll switch to a dry part of the paper towel. So basically I'm spreading it around again, as well as absorbing some of it. Like I say, this is the calabash style bowl is probably the most challenging ones to actually finish. I think we got it all wiped off. And if we have little places that maybe I didn't get it totally wiped off, a little bit of 800 grit sandpaper will sand any of the little bumps or anything like that that may have appeared. And then we'll buff this with Vonex, and it will be done. But I can't do that until it sets up. So once again, we're 18 to 24 inches away. I'm going to spray in about 2 or 3 different directions. And it settles right down inside the bowl. The other thing that's left to do to this would be to put my initials, the kind of wood in the initials on the bottom. That's why I left this little area. This little area here, whenever I go to put the 3408 on it, we can give that a couple minutes, and then I'll go over and I'll burn it, and I'll show you what I'm talking about when it comes to the not wanting to absorb around this area here. I have to be really sort of quick about putting it on, wiping it off, and probably 9 times out of 10 I'm going to have to sand a little bit down in this area. Probably when it comes right down to it, I could have done that. Maybe could have, should have did that before we actually put the super glue on it. That's okay. Oh. Get our vacuum chuck out of the road. The wonders of the calabash style bowl, I don't want to fall off of here though, is no matter how far you flip it over, you can flip it halfway over on its side and it always comes back to the center. It will not fall over, which kind of fascinates people at a craft show. They're kind of, I think they're kind of neat. They look like they're sitting on imagination as well. So I can get my gloves off, preferably without destroying them. Is always a plus, but Harbor Freight seems to have these on sale all the time, so, or quite frequently, especially this time of year. So, I can show you which one did I do? The other thing I've been making a bunch of is these little lanterns. These couple here, I don't remember which one, but I finished up some of them earlier today, put it that way. So I'm going to go ahead and show you what it looks like to bring them to life, give them a shine. And the bowl that we just finished, I can wait till next weekend and do that, but it'll get done the same way. It'll just get buffed with the Vonex. speed for the wheels around 1700 RPMs. This is what the Vonex looks like. I started out using I purchased a half a bar originally, and this is about a quarter of the bar that's left, something like that. You don't use a ton of it. It's just making the wheel look a little bit orange in color. And we're not going to press real hard on it, especially on these lanterns, because there's holes. These you sort of have to hang on to these, because it's not really a great thing to have the big holes that these have in them. It has a tendency to try and get a hold of them. But it's still probably the most simplest finishing process that I've ever come across, especially for the wood turning world. I've done cabinet work pretty much all my life. I mean, that all gets sprayed with lacquer, but when I started into the turning adventure, why I found that I don't necessarily have what it takes to spray lacquer on something round. I can do the outside of a bowl or something like that pretty easily. But when it comes to the inside, I just never really got the hang of it, or the knack of spraying the inside as well as what I would like. You can see, as I rotate it around in the light, where I have buffed, it's nice and shiny. It's going to give you like a nice high satin, semi-gloss kind of a shine. It's not going to be super glass-like shine. And if you want the super glass-like shine, then you would have to use the 3460 and put multiple coats on. But then you're going to have to sand it back and all that good happy-go-lucky stuff, like the pen people do in the pen world. It can be done, but to me, it's not. As far as I'm concerned, it's not a necessity. It is best to leave this go for the full 24 hours so that it's really nice and hard. This will be the only one of them that I buffed, because I think this is the one that I actually did the other day. Or at least the majority of it anyhow. If I go after it too quickly, what will happen is, as the buffing wheel is going across the open part of the grain, it acts like a little vacuum and it can pull some of the glue that might still be down in there that hasn't cured yet. It'll pull it back to the surface and instantly cure, and then we'll have little bumps on it. So we don't necessarily want that. So we'll get it nice and smooth and semi-shiny. We'll do the end. And I really haven't been doing anything on the inside. I do have a teeny tiny little buffing wheel that would go on the Fordham that I could possibly go in there and buff them, but it's usually just a matter of picking the little fuzzies out, because the buffing wheel leaves fuzzies behind on some of that kind of stuff. So there's our our polishing part. Now we'll put a coat of wax on it, carnauba wax. It's just a stick. Rub it up over the buffing wheel. Buffing speed went down to about 900 RPMs. And we want to keep things moving here and not put a ton of pressure on it, because this is really when heat is not our friend. Because we don't want to heat up the carnauba wax so that it becomes a liquid, where it is very, very difficult to get off of things. But it is very durable as far as wax goes. And it's going to step up the shine one more level. And that's pretty much it. That's, like I say, it doesn't get much simpler to use. If you don't have the buffing wheels, now something like that would be really challenging, but would be more so challenging. But you can use the abrasive paste on them. These little lanterns get one of them little LED tea lights inside of them. And we can bring that, see if I can hold still enough to bring things in nice and close. And that's what they look like sitting on the shelf. A tea light will get glued in there. These tea lights here, as cheap as what they are as far as price goes, they actually do have a replaceable battery in them. So they're kind of they've been kind of a sort of an interesting project to do. They're not as quick. I got to go back after that one. I got some bumps there. I was kind of disappointed in some ways at the craft shows that they didn't sell as well as what they did. I would have thought they would have sold better than what they did. Now that the craft show is over and some different people have seen them or whatever, now all of a sudden they want some, but it's all good. So you can't see it. You won't be able to see it. It's more of a feel thing, but right there, because these sort of get finished, I haven't figured out a way of actually finishing the entire thing at one time. So I got places where I didn't get it wiped off on when I did the lid and get my face shield out of the road. So I was probably leaning right into that. .800 grit sandpaper. That's all I'm using. And I'm getting rid of, but it is still plastic, so it will clog up the sandpaper. That is one thing that you can't get around. I've never really tried to. You probably could wet sand this somewhat if it was something bigger in size than this. And then maybe it wouldn't clog it up, but okay. So that's basically all there is to fixing something that wasn't quite up to par. So we'll go back to our Vonnex wheel and put my face shield back on. These dumb wheels, little threads come off of them, and they inevitably stick to your nose or go up your nose, one of the two. So I'll just go back and rebuff those areas that I sanded a little bit. According to Martin and John both from our wood turning club, which are kind of resident experts on the wood, they say this is cherry. Based on the bark and things of that nature. I'm like, it's white. And it's got little splotches all through it. And their philosophy on the splotches is that it is starting to decay. They say it's cherry. It's kind of it does make it kind of very. I think it makes a very interesting little lantern. It's a little bit harder to work with because it is starting to decay, and it's not so much the cutting as far as the turning part goes. I don't have any problem with that because I'm willing to. I have sharp tools and I go at a pretty high rate of speed, but these holes being drilled with a Forstner bit are not always as cleanly cut as what I would like them to be. Actually, you can really see it if you look. Let me get my face shield off. I don't lean into that. If you look, see if I can do this without making things dizzy. See, if you look down in the bottom, down in here, that's where the Forstner bit stopped down in there, and it wants to chew it all up in there. But not really doing anything about that as far as up in there goes, because it's really nothing you're gonna, that the person that would maybe purchase this or whatever, they're not gonna, say, turn this upside down and look up in there and say, oh man, that's all chewed up. They're not interested in that. They're interested in looking at it just like it is. I do have two different lights for them. I have one that white one is one that stays on all the time. I can show you the other ones. Here's a black and white one, sort of. I made my measurement was a little bit wrong on that, and this only started out 1 3/4 inches, so I should have only drilled a 1-inch hole instead of 1 1/8 inches, because these sides here are getting pretty thin, but something different. But I do have 5 of them made, so Dad we can get together sometime this week. And for that lady that wants however many she wants. That's all I'm going to do with them. Like I said, I know the rest of them I finished up today. So I'm definitely a firm believer in giving them the 24 hours to cure before I move on and buff them. Need a knockout bar. And I do have one other bowl that I should do something with because it's starting to crack on me, unfortunately. This is a piece of white birch. It's been around a couple years. I turned it, this crack appeared very directly after I started turning on it. I did fill some of it in, but now in sitting over here on the workbench, it has decided it should crack more yet. So I think what I'm going to do with it is just turn it, sort of rough turn it. At least get the inside out. I'll leave it about an inch thick or whatever. And then I'll fill all them cracks in. And then we will go from there. Is that not the right chuck for it? Should be. Oh, no, it's not. This is the size bowls that I did for a friend of my wife's. I wanted them for Christmas. I had one made and she wanted 5. So I did manage to get her the 5. That's going to be entirely too big. That won't work. Never a good thing when you make the tenet the wrong size. So I know very good and well I had it on this tenet in here on the inside. Get it back to where it was at. We'll see how much this thing has moved. Kind of surprisingly enough, it really hasn't moved that overly much. I don't know what I did. My tenet should be back out in here. Okay. Easy enough to solve. A little bigger tool rest. And keyboard. We can go back over to that view. Let's see over here. And we'll widen that out a little bit. Move it a little bit. Okay, you gotta see, pretty much see what we're doing. My dividers actually line up with this area out here, so that's where my foot's gonna be. We'll make a new foot and then we'll proceed. I'm not going to reach through the outside because all I'm going to do is make this, give us a tenet down here to grab a hold of. And then we'll get rid of, actually what I could do, that's that one. What I could do with this is make a secondary tenant, which will come into play at some point. You just have to make it small enough so that it doesn't bottom out in the chuck. And then we'll go back to our parting tool. This parting tool is ground at the angle for the dovetail jaws. So that should work. Can find out quick enough before we... Oh, we're going to grab it with that one. So. Yeah, plenty of room. Get rid of a live center so that I don't smack my elbow on it. And we'll try without the dust collector. So everything clears. We'll true up this edge a little bit. This also has some super glue on it. So we'll just true that up. It'll make it easier as far as cutting goes. Makes it a little easier to pick up the cut. I wanted to see whether this cracked. Yeah, I didn't do a real good job cleaning up that, or getting that crack filled. Didn't go down in as far as what it should have. This stuff is not super wet, but it's definitely wet enough to have decided it's going to move on me. So we'll pick a number out here, probably about there, 1.25 inches maybe. And then we'll work on getting rid of some. Get rid of some of the bulk of it. And it's been, I said I wasn't going to use a dust collector, but I'm going to lie, because there's so much of this stuff here. And after being sick last weekend, dust is not necessarily my friend. And the other thing I got to do, a little bit longer tool rest than what I got. Like I say, this is white birch, relatively soft. Really doesn't look much at this point. This one does have some color to it, but once you put the finish on it, it actually is kind of pretty. We change things. We always make sure we want to spin things. And we should be able to get to the center. Give us some room to move in there. Could actually switch over to the 40-degree gouge, because I know it's sharp versus that one we know we used on the other bowl. So make some really nice big curly shavings. You can feel when you pick the shavings up like that and you squeeze them together, if the wood has enough moisture in it, which this does, it'll actually create a ball that doesn't fall apart. When it's dry, if you're doing dry wood, then it will fall apart. And then you come back up and pick up a little bit right there. And what I'm after here is to get things consistent thickness wise. Even though it is going to be thicker, I still want it to be as consistent as what I can make it. I don't think I'm going to get calipers out after this one, but you can see it has some pretty grain in it. Got to keep an eye on my cracks though. The crack doesn't come through to the inside, which is definitely a plus. That way it'll be much easier to fill from the outside. So I'm I might actually have to get out the 5/8 gouge because I'm gonna what's gonna happen here. I can probably get rid of some of that down in here yet. I'm gonna get to the point where I'm gonna have too much tool hanging over the tool rest, and then we'll get vibration and all that stuff that we don't want. The 40-degree gouge is not like to go. That's about as far down as what you can go with them. As you can see, it's just chewing things up to beat the band on the end grain. It does not like the end grain. So somewhere in here, there we go. Just use a smaller one. I could just cheat and go to the bottom bowl gouge. Not really cheating, but let's see. The bottom bowl gouge does a wonderful job across the bottom, like it's supposed to. Feels like we're still plenty thick, so I can make the curve, pick up the cut back up in here, make the curve go a little bit better. A very heavy tool to use. It's made to do just what I'm doing with it right there, where I'm hanging over the tool rest 3 or 4 inches or more. Certainly not the smoothest cut going down through there. Gotta watch because the handle on this is long enough to hit my tool rest back here. I could use a shorter one. This is the same grind. It's just on a 5/8 inch bar. It's much shorter handle. It's going to give the same type of a cut. It's a very, very clean cut. Kind of a little different to get used to using, but it will do a nice, neat job. I can do the old pencil test. Close one eye. Just sight down along the rim. But we're definitely a little bit thinner down here at the very, very bottom. But we also have tenants down there that's got to dry too. So we're in pretty much good shape. So we'll just let that. Probably should put it in a paper bag and let it go for a couple weeks, and then we'll come back to it and fill these cracks. See if any more appear. Because we definitely have relieved stresses in the wood by taking the middle out. If you're really paying attention, closely paying attention, you'll find this outside is further out around than what it was when we started because of relieving the center part. But we'll just let it go. A couple weeks. It's always good to put the date on there. Oh, pencil point that's broke. Not the 23rd. It is. Yeah, like that. What did I say it was? March. Like I say, I'll put that in a paper grocery bag. Throw it up on the shelf for a couple weeks or more. Dusted my eyes. Other than that, though, I think that's going to be pretty much it for me tonight. Wonders of working for UPS. I have to go to work tomorrow, which is something new for us. We've never really worked, or not very many people worked on Christmas Eve, but whatever reason this year they decided that they're going to run a sort. The hub's going to run tomorrow, so that means all of us good people that are jockeys and everything like that, we have to go to work. Not sure how late we'll work, but we got to go to work, and hopefully we keep it to a nice, simple 8-hour day or 9-hour day, but we shall see. At least that's my hope, anyhow. Because it is not, surprisingly enough, which most people that I've talked to are like, well, it's a holiday. Well, actually, believe it or not, for us, it is not a holiday. Not a contractual holiday. Christmas Day is. New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, but Christmas Eve is not a holiday. So other than the cleaning up a little bit here, because now we got some wet chips up here. You got to get some of them off. Anybody have any questions, comments? Otherwise, we're going to call it a day. And let me think. Will I be back next Saturday? No, probably not, because we're going to celebrate our Christmas next Saturday because all of us good people got COVID, and I have a 3-month-old granddaughter, so that's out of the question as far as us getting together either today or we could have gotten together on Monday. But we're all within, the wife and I are both within the 10, I'm out of the 10-day, but my wife is not. So our Christmas will be next Saturday. So I probably will not be here next Saturday. Then maybe I'll try and do something on Friday or something like that instead. But if not, we'll definitely be back in 2 weeks. So until then, anybody that's joined from YouTube, welcome. If you can hit the subscribe button, that would be great. But otherwise, thanks for showing up. And that one. And then we'll go over here to Twitch.